Hey, I'm Max, and today I'll show you how to make a selection menu. You can use a menu like this, for example, to change character customization or to make a level selection screen where you can select which level you want to play. So we're going to make a script that's going to generate a selection menu just from a list of array of whatever we have, so levels or customization options, and allow us to click on each one and call a different function with different parameters based on which one we clicked. So what I have here is the project from my character customization video, and pretty much all there is when you click it loops through all the options, but obviously that's not very good for when you're making a game because you don't want the player to have to loop through all the options, especially if you have a ton. For the sake of time on this video, I'll only do it with mouth, but you can do it with each one and create buttons so you can switch between eyes and mouth, for example, by disabling one and enabling the other one. So let's not waste any time. I'll go into my canvas, right click, UI, and then select a panel. If you don't already have a canvas, you can go on your camera, right click UI panel, and it's going to create a canvas. So now my panel, I'll make it about this size right here, and I'll actually put it dark because I think it looks better that way. I'll click add component and add a grid layout because I want my options to be in a grid. I'll put the spacing to, let's say, 50, so they kind of have a distance between them. Now I will create one example of how it will look to have one option. So I'll create a button and I'll call it option. Now I'll go into my option. I'll set it the sprite of, let's say, I1, doesn't really matter. You can see it here. It's kind of small though, so I think I'll increase my cell size to 200 by 200. Now I will drag this option game object into my assets to create a prefab. I just made a prefab folder to keep things clean, and that's just things left over from my previous tutorials. So my option prefab is here. Now I can delete it right here in the scene. I'll go into my scripts folder, create a new C# script, and I'll call it something like UI. So over here in my UI class, I want to get the panel, so I'll get it as a game object, it doesn't matter. And I'll call it option panel. I also want a game object for the option prefab that we created. Now I want to get the list of all my options, so I'll do public sprite array and then mouth. And over here I'll do it in the start because as soon as I open my game I want the option panel to show, but if you don't want to show it as soon as you start your game, you might want to create a function like open panel or something like this. In my case I'll just do it in start. So first off, what I want to do is make sure that the panel has no child, because if, for example, you have a function to open your panel and you put all the options in and then the player closes it and reopens it, you don't want the old options to still be in. So in my case that's not going to do anything, but you want to make sure to add this, especially if you have something that can close and open or change the content. So I'll just do for each transform child in option panel. So for each child that the option panel has, and you have to do dot transform because the child are in the transform, I want to destroy child. And that's pretty much self-explanatory. For each child there is, you destroy the child. So now you make sure that the panel has no child, and then you're going to fill it up. So here I'll do for int I equals 0. It's a classic for int loop. I is less than mouth.length I plus plus. And in here I'll do instantiate. Actually I'll save the game object that I created. Game object option equals to instantiate. Then I'll instantiate the option prefab, not panel, prefab. And I'll do it as a child of the option panel. So I'll just do option panel.transform, and it's going to be a child of the panel. And because of our grid layout, we don't have to worry about the position and size. That's going to be set by the panel. Now all we need to do is set the onclick of the option. So to set the onclick effect of the option, we actually need to create a delegate, and that kind of looks and sounds complicated, but really it's not, especially just for doing this. So all we'll do is create a new variable. I'll call it k, you can call it whatever you want, and set it equals to I, so we get the amount that we're in the loop. And we need to do this because otherwise it's going to set it at the end of the loop, so it's always going to be the maximum I. Then we do option dot get component button, so we get the button component, and to get the button we need to using Unity Engine.ui. Then we get the button dot onclick dot add listener, and then we put our delegate and we put our function in here. So I'll create a function here, for example, public void click option and then int option index or something like this. And now in the delegate, I'll just do click option and then k with a semicolon inside. And now what that's going to do is pretty much make it so when we click, it's going to call option with the k, which is the loop that we're at right now. So at first we'll be at 0, we'll create the mount option 0, then we'll add the click option 0, so when we click it, it's going to call this with 0. Now one more thing that we have to do is set the option prefab sprite so it shows the correct option. So I'll simply do option.getComponent sprite renderer dot sprite equals to mouse and then I, so it shows the one that we're currently at. In here I'll change my character customization. If you haven't already watched my video on that, you can go watch it. It's up on my channel. So here right now I have a change mount that's going to go to the next one, but I actually want to create a change mount with a int and then index, and I'm simply going to set the mount index to the index and then change it. So I can use the option panel to say which index it is instead of going to the next one. And over here in option, I'll actually just do find object of type tutorial. It might not be the best way to do it, but just for this tutorial it's fine. And I'll do dot change mount and I'll set it to the option index. Okay, so now I just go on whatever game object I want. Let's say my canvas, and I add the UI script. Now I put in the panel, I put in the prefab for the option, and I'll put in my 4 mounts, which are like so. I'll just drag them in the array. So I set it to 4 and I just drag in my 4 options. And now if I run it, I get an error because I did sprite renderer instead of image. So be careful when you're doing UI, it's image, not sprite renderer. So right here, instead of sprite renderer, it's image. And now it should work. And there we go, now we have our 4 options, and if we click on them, it changes to whatever we click. Just one little detail that we forgot here, we can see it's written button on the prefab, so that's because I forgot to delete the text under it, so I'll just delete the text in the prefab, and now it should no longer show button on the images. And there we go, now it's working fine. Now one last thing, let's say that we have a bunch of options, so I duplicate them over and over again. You can see that they get off the panel and we cannot scroll or anything to get them. So if you have a bunch of options, you might want to add a scroll to your panel. So for this, go into your canvas and create a other canvas, so UI canvas, and call it something like scroll. And then you want to add a component on that new canvas and add a scroll rect. Now set the size of that canvas to whatever size you want your panel to be, and set your panel as a child. Now in that scroll rec, drag in the panel as the content and the scroll itself as the viewport. You can disable whether you want horizontal or vertical. In my case, I don't want horizontal, I only want vertical. And on the panel, you want to add a content size fitter like this, and set the horizontal or vertical, whichever you want. In my case, it's vertical, to min size. And now if I play, if I add a bunch of options, I should be able to scroll like this. So you can see here I cannot scroll because it's too small, but if I add a bunch, now I can scroll between them. Also, let's say you want the panel to stop right here before the button. If you scroll up, you can see it goes over it. So to do this, you can add a mask. So go on your scroll canvas, add the image, doesn't matter if it's a white image. Now add the component mask and uncheck the show mask graphic. And now if I hit play, you'll see if I scroll up, oh, there's not enough option again. Let's say I copy and paste it a bunch of times. Now if I scroll up, you can see it doesn't go over the button above anymore. So thanks for watching this video. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Make sure to subscribe for other Unity tutorials, and check out my already made vids so you can see my previous tutorials, even on how to make full games like the plane shooter game. And if there's anything you want to know how to do and you don't know how, you can leave a suggestion in the comments and I might do it.